He will cry if I die first. He lost his performance, not me. Marion Marshall scribbled that on a small piece of paper found in her Los Angeles residence following her death, in 2018. It was unclear who it was intended for until reading the next paragraph. After being acclaimed as Hollywood's ideal gentleman, husband, and co-star, Robert Wagner became her darkest memory. Marion chose to remain silent for over 50 years, living in Wagner's shadow. Natalie Wood, too. Hollywood's legendary love story. She broke that mask before dying. I once considered taking everything to my grave, Marion told a close journalist. But maybe I owe that to Natalie. Why did Marion Marshall, once a Hollywood icon, tell the truth near the end of her life? What led her to suspect Natalie Wood's death was not an accident? Let's revisit the 1950s, when glamour began and Robert Wagner, a silent figure, emerged. Marion stated, "He never loved anyone." With a gruff voice like the wind in her Los Angeles apartment window frame. He simply liked himself. Robert Wagner, the golden kid of 1950s Hollywood, captivated millions with his confident gaze and gentlemanly grin. Marion saw the light as a flawless mask concealing an empty soul. Since 1957, Hollywood dreamed of a fairy tale romance between Robert Wagner and Marion Marshall. The Life magazine cover depicted a marital drama produced by ambition and starring Wagner, with Marion playing a supporting role in her own life. Hollywood celebrated the 1957 dream wedding of Robert Wagner and Marion Marshall with flashbulbs and gossip pages. The wedding took place at the Beverly Hills Hotel, with photographers capturing every moment, from the first kiss to Marion's veil blowing in the warm California breeze. It looked wonderful outside. Marion realized Wagner was playing when he took her hand and led her down the hotel steps. He grinned at the ideal camera angle, adjusted his cufflinks, and whispered, "Smile, baby. Some are watching." The innocuous remark became a daily refrain for Marion during their marriage. She confided in her close friend, actress Mighty Gaynor. "He checks his reflection before kissing me. Not staring at me. He's examining himself." Wagner tenderly laid his hand on her shoulder in every photoplay photo, his grin warm and gaze compassionate. After the lights went off, he became eerily silent. Sometimes Marion would wake up to find him sitting on the sofa, staring at nothing, with a cigarette burning in his hand. To her question, he said, "I'm working on my next role." Marion eventually understood that Robert was a persona, not a man, even at home. Publicly, they were known as V Studio's golden pair. Marion felt no warmth from their affection. "He never held my hand in public without a camera." Although she thought it was overblown, photographs of that era proved it. Wagner kept a half-step distance from his wife, even without a lens, to maintain his meticulously constructed image. During the 1958 release of A Kiss Before Dying, Fox crew members recalled Wagner spending hours in the mirror perfecting his smile and profile. Marion inquired, "Are you preparing for the premiere?" He said, "No, I'm preparing to be remembered." Then she realized he didn't need love. He required recognition. Marion accompanied her husband at high-end Hollywood events in Bear, discreetly observing his charm. Robert chatted with multiple individuals simultaneously, constantly smiling and looking for the nearest light. Marion often compared it to living with a portrait, not a man. Before Marion Wagner was hopelessly in love with Natalie Wood, the American darling of Rebel Without a Cause. When he married Marion, he was always in Natalie's shadow. Wagner displayed a framed shot of her on their bedroom vanity, describing it as a stunning film artifact. Marion remained silent. She turned aside and grieved that night. She admitted, "I knew I could never compete with the past." Years later, "I was only there to fill the space she left behind." They moved into a large Coldwater Canyon mansion in 1960. The mansion was large yet chilly. With mirrors on the walls, Marion felt like a third person was always present. Wagner sat in front of mirrors every morning, combing his hair, straightening his tie, and smiling a grin not meant for her. Marion quipped, "What if the mirror breaks one day?" He said in a cold voice, "I'll buy a new one." They were the perfect pair publicly. They appeared on Look magazine's cover, attended Oscar parties, and posed with Hollywood's top stars. Behind closed doors, Wagner consistently outpaced Marion. She stated, "I felt like his shadow," in an unpublished 2017 interview. And shadows are never meant to be seen in the light. Marion eventually discovered her partner was obsessed with fame, even more than himself. Their marriage was not a connection between two persons. There was a three-way relationship between Wagner's image and the woman who had to watch. Marriage stopped in 1962. Newspapers said, Marion Marshall and Robert Wagner part ways amicably. Those close to Marion recall her words when signing the divorce papers. Finally, I can leave his movie. After that, she left Hollywood and lived peacefully with her daughter. Wagner reappeared brighter, polished, composed, and smiling with his consistent control. Marion stated, she'll find out, too, when Natalie Wood's name surfaced alongside his again over a decade later. And that was just his exterior. Behind the flawless facade, Robert Wagner hid a terrifying possessive instinct. Marion Marshall did not find Robert Wagner's captivating eyes to be the enchantment of love. They were invisible chains that shackled her life during their marriage. In 1960, they attended a Sunset Boulevard party with Hollywood legends like Tony Curtis, Debbie Reynolds, and Vincente Minnelli. Champagne glasses were bathed in golden light. The jazz drifted. Everyone laughed loudly. Marion donned a silver silk outfit with lightly waved hair. A dreamy star everywhere. Though she smiled back at her old co-star, Jeffrey Hunter, minutes later, Robert intervened. The man smiled, but his hand roughly gripped her wrist, causing her to jump. He whispered in her ear, just too hearing, no need to tell you to look other men in the eye. He finished speaking, smiled politely for everyone, and dragged Marion away. At the automobile, she sat silently. Light from neon signs mixed with tears on her face that on entering the parking lot, her close friend Mighty saw Marion bending and crying silently. The silence was oppressive, with no shouting or arguments. Marion subsequently stated, he never yells. Just looking. I can't breathe with that look. When she left without warning him, he would be at the door, eyes cold and quiet, a tempest of wrath raging underneath. Who did you go out with? He asked quietly. The words stung. Marion would disappear for hours if he waited, pacing the room, lighting a cigarette, and stifling it halfway through, leaving a dense smoke trail that Marion's dream home, Coldwater Canyon Mansion, eventually became a place of confinement. Wagner discouraged her from solo activities, acting, and interacting with past male co-stars. Hollywood isn't for married women, remarked. Marion nodded, understanding that meant, I don't want anyone else looking at you. Wagner made an unexpected appearance on set after Marion accepted a fashion advertising shoot for Modern Screen. While the photographer altered her stance, Robert stood in a corner with icy eyes. After the session, Marion heard him whisper to the photographer, burn the shots you think she looks best in. No one laughed. No one inquired. Naturally, the photos never emerged. Marion increasingly saw herself as an ornament rather than a wife in Robert Wagner's perfect world. He planned her schedule, selected outfits for outings, and authorized or denied house calls. He waited beside Marion as she answered the phone. He'd then inquire, who was that? Inspection, not curiosity. Wagner's control was quiet. Few times did he display rage. He talked softly, like a breeze, so as to discourage opposition. The previous housekeeper reported that Mrs. Marion always smiled at home, but would sit bewildered for hours when he left. Marion returned to film in 1961 with a minor role in All Hands on Deck, despite Wagner's silence throughout the evening. Around midnight, he entered the room, placed her script on the table, and said, if you want to be an actress, don't be my wife. Marion informed the director of her illness the following morning. She never returned to film when the role was given to someone else. Wagner portrayed the ideal husband at gatherings, smiling, pouring drinks, and resting a loving arm about her, like an advertisement. However, if someone placed their touch on her arm for too long, his smile faded when the door closed. Marion heard the familiar conversation. You looked at him like that, why? I ignored everyone. I saw. Do not deceive me. Marion became accustomed to not looking at others, even when they talked directly to her. I gradually lost the feeling of independence. His lock wasn't needed, she said. Eyes were enough to imprison. The breaking point occurred in autumn 1962 when Marion wished to visit her mother in New York. Wagner initially agreed, but later gave her a same-day round-trip ticket. After lunch with your mother, return. Unable to sleep without you. It sounded romantic. Marion knew it was right. Wagner became increasingly convinced that everyone was trying to steal Marion. In one evening, a high school acquaintance read her a letter and tore it apart, saying, "Only I don't like other people remembering you." Marion bowed her head, her hands shaking. A buddy, actor George Nader, remarked, "Robert, you guard your wife like a treasure." Wagner smiled and whispered in a soft, terrifying tone, "Hold on to a treasure or someone will steal it." Marion lost her sense of self due to a love that was both possessive and obsessive. Her stately mansion felt like a glass prison every morning. Everything sparkled, was flawless, and suffocating. Marion informed a friend of her 1962 divorce. "I'm staying. I love him less, and will go if I stay." Indeed, that happened. Marion almost disappeared after marriage. From Hollywood. Robert did not. He was more stunning than ever. Polished, confident smile plus the controlling stare that never left changed. When Natalie Wood's name appeared alongside his over a decade later, Marion barely spoke briefly. She said, "She'll find out too." But it was too late. Behind his refined manners, Robert Wagner had a second instinct, single breath, smile-eye double face. On TV, Robert Wagner she was calm, polished, and smiling like a Hollywood star. Gentleman, confident and exact in speaking, never displaying emotion. According to Marion Marshall, the man behind the closed door was completely different. His voice stops when the door closes. So dense quiet. "It feels like someone is in the room," she said. Silence was not tranquility. It belongs to someone hiding a shadow. Hollywood image peaked in the 1960s. Masterful stars, their image lasted. Nobody knew that better than Robert Wagner. He performed for others. Cameras in everyday life. He thanked and bowed to staff at supper. Greeted acquaintances. His automobile door closed moments thereafter. Face turned cold instantly. Marion remembered leaving Beverly press-covered Hill's party. A kind arm wrapped around her. He pulled back his hand minutes later as the automobile turned along a quiet street. Muttered, "Next time, grin less. People will believe you're pretending." Marion fell silent. She understood he wasn't then averse to pretense. He was worried about others seeing her joyful. Because his script didn't include happiness. Wagner's collaborators said he could instantly alter expressions. One moment tender, another scary. He was complimented on set for natural. Marion considered it non-acting. It was his true self. She stated, "He understands when to smile, be silent, grasp my hand to comfort audience. Everything is calculated." One morning in 1961, Marion opened the drawer of look for a receipt at Robert's desk. In the papers, she found cream, colorful envelope with clean calligraphy and worn corners. The unscented RJ letter was written, "T. O. Natalie Wood. Start with, I've tried to forget you, but I only felt emptier." Marion stopped reading. She folded and returned the letter, walked gently out of the room to avoid crying. After that day, she never asked Robert about Natalie again since she knew the answer would be another performance. From then on, Marion realized that the man she lived with was faked. He embodied several roles. Sometimes the perfect husband, sometimes charming gentleman, and as the lights went out, a lone figure terrified Ophi's shadow. Marion woke up around 3 o'clock one night. The morning saw Robert facing the bedroom mirror in dim light across his face. Long time, he stared at himself wordless. Softly, Marion asked, "Can't you sleep?" He replied calmly, "I want to confirm I'm still the man that others expect." That answer chilled her. For Robert Wagner, the facts didn't matter. Important was that some believed the falsehood. In subsequent years, Wagner continues to prosper. He appeared on chat shows and American television portrayed a kind, gentle man. When Marion was mentioned, Hewald grinned nicely. "She's great, but we weren't compatible." No malice or blame. Simply a tone of someone who had learned to talk about every wound. But everyone who visited their home described a strange atmosphere. Production assistants stated everything no laughter came from the clean, neat dwelling. Even light appeared regulated. Marion had a lovely life devoid of emotion where every touch and glance was scripted purpose. Later, Marion was interviewed. Noted, he constantly said, "I'm really honest." Those who say they're honest are frequently the best liars. Robert reunited with Natalie Wood in the early 1970s. That Marion wasn't surprised. She knew it would happen. His stories never stop until they have an ending. Conclusion that makes the audience cry, she said. So that reunion began a truly tragedy. No script, lights, or line to speak of. Explain it. Robert Wagner appeared in public without a gun. Crack inside. His life's passengers, Mary and Natalie, close pals, stated he had two faces. One for the world. Marion closed her story with a disturbing thinks he's the real deal, not just a good actor. The scariest part is that Robert Wagner resumed his excellent interviews and smiles. Longest role, the respectable man everyone trusts. But when silence persists when the stage lights go out, Mary Ann Marshall listened throughout her youth, yet his silence persisted when Catalina's surf dragged a yacht away one night. Last woman to believe in Robert Wagner's grin. In late November 1981, Catalina's seas were frigid and black as velvet. Natalie Wood's yacht death spread rapidly than a wave. Marion Marshall listened to the radio in her little LA apartment that wrapped firmly around herself to prevent shaking. She said 3 words, light as air, weighty as stone. I believed it was a shock line. But it was a concluding phrase to years-long intuition about a man between love and between a polished public grin and a chilly stillness. Possession closed doors. Her ex-husband Robert Wagner. Off Santa Catalina Island. The press and authorities investigated what transpired that night. Grandeur, its wooden cabin, and its mast lights brushing the sea like brushstrokes transported 4 persons. Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and Captain Dennis Diver. It started as a weekend escape, but became a tense weekend. From the cabin's little bar, glasses full and empty. Life and career entwined. Always beneath the laughing was a squeezed silence like this. Marion said it was so thick it felt like someone was there. After midnight till dawn is a script with no ending. Natalie, by many, was initially reported as an accident. The boat plunged into the water and was found dead. Newspapers used the term unintentional drowning recur. However, in later years, statement revisions, fresh interviews, and forensic file small features cracked as the ancient photo was inspected. Like the drifting dinghy, noises, disputes, bruises. Each part made folks wonder if it was an accident. Why? Highly unsuitable. Marion was no investigator. A woman who has experienced Wagner, stage lights, and who understood orbiting a man from the chill of a shutting door who made love a prison because he valued control. Marion remembered Wagner saying something cryptic at a party years previously when the drink had taken hold, deprived of music and buzz. The line sounded like a potential hairline scrape. She never used it. Reproach him, keeping it like a thorn until the end. Marion watched automobile lights pass by the window as Natalie's death broke worldwide. Boulevard like falling stars. She remembered Robert as a man who could, like a suit, modify his story, mildly or strongly. I don't remember everything. In public, he was polite, careful, and never provocative. Just words planned as deliberately as a picture veteran's steps. Marion saw concealment in action. She stated he can convince Hollywood, which is why I dread him. What's behind that smile? The official file ended with word accident. Public calmed. But whenever Robert appeared on TV, the event recurred. In following years, various accounts changed. Television investigations revived the story. Splendor's captain talked further. Since forensic developments hit the headlines, the phrase person of the media took notice when authorities announced a review case. Society changed, investigative tools improved, and reading habits say Dark Knight changed. Robert Wagner's name remained between light and dark. Unconvicted but always suspicious, the media reported on fame, an adored star, a TV face, deep influence Hollywood contacts, lawyers, managers, and publicists like unseen, yet touchable soft fence. Fences can slow the truth, but not bend it. Marion grasped that mechanism better, narrative in circles, public doubt into tiredness, than anyone else. She resided there and was placed exactly where the she was complimented and then pushed into the darkness when the light turned off. Marion recorded one thing before she died. Her frail voice, he's frightened of water, so maybe it was just what he feared engulfed his beloved. Image, metaphor, and fate. A man who built his a mirror that only showed appearances. Finally awoken by a black, unending surface that reflected nothing but gloom. Robert gave few interviews that refuted any dark rumors, stating Natalie's death was a wound. He spoke of his affection for her, family memories, and all he had fought to safeguard. Some assumed it was a terrible accident, while others believed some side, claiming there were too many coincidences. Time alone owns truth, not those who demand it. Marion's clearest vision was never the trend repeated in legal findings. The man of the spotlight, the silent man who whispered quietly yet clutched fast, man who sacrificed love to worship himself from the house in Coldwater Canyon, to glossy wood of brilliance from Beverly Hills Lights, to Blackwater's Catalina. The scenery changed, but not the soul. Marion whispered at the tape's finish, "He's still acting. Still believes." Not because the audience was naive, but because the presentation was simple. Too perfect. When police reviewed the case years later, the press revisited they mentioned Wagner's adjustments. Remarks about envy and competing timeline possessiveness, which Marion described throughout her marriage. No one could definitively end the narrative or reopen it. Marion still didn't suspect Robert Wagner. Constant. She never named a culprit, merely traced the contour to a tragic tale of love and power that strangled each other. Natalie's loved ones regularly brought flowers to the Avalon Pier. They stand silently. Before turning away, the salt wind whips their sleeves. Deep blue water changes to city hums on the far shore. Discussion place. Audiences want a clear explanation, but the sea doesn't speak, it keeps. Marion's silence faint but clear voice. The terrible thing isn't an accident, but what happens when we accept every accident as fate? Marion's legacy was a warning, an era that raised image that became a religion. Another man utilized images as shields and sword. A love between admiration and possession so thin finally shattered. Natalie Wood's death officially ruled, an accident is the greatest mirror, reflecting what Marion said her whole life. The perfect gentleman may have a unfathomable abyss. As files change over time, summer 2018 in Los Angeles saw Catalina's ways continued. A headline appeared months after Marion ended her life across TV screens. Former fans were reviewing the case. Natalie paused, peering at the screen like a jarred door. Marion stated she was done waiting. His audience still believes in his acting, not the courts or journalists. That line was for people who always want to live in a wonderful story, even if it's not written in Blackwater. Marion Marshall died softly. Large memorial, no flash lamps, no lengthy obituaries. She left trembling recordings and pieces of phrases, remembering the guy who made Hollywood believe in perfection made me tremble. Through cinema. Not because they presented a shocking secret, but because they revealed a harsh reality. Sometimes tragedy starts silently. Criminality with an overly long-held role. Robert Wagner has tiptoed between legend and reality for decades. Deception between light and shadow, between his character and his manhood, writing for himself. Possibly his greatest tragedy. Lost himself long before Natalie Wood. At the moment, he chose performance over living to love through a role like a heart. Now, when Catalina's waves crash on the coast, continuous reminder, Marion's voice remains in that final tape. He acts and the audience believes. If you think Hollywood has a shadow, smile waiting to be unveiled. Like, subscribe, and share this video. More individuals can learn the untold narrative regarding Robert Wagner lived his entire life in a self-made role.